It's crazy how much your mindset shifts as you grow, and especially as you want to turn a blog into a business, and you kind of have to start implementing that business mindset into it and act not just as a blogger, but as the CEO and make good decisions for your brand and company.
That was Jessica Hoffman, and this is episode number 185 of the Chopped Podcast. Hey there, how are you doing today? Thanks for joining me on the Chopped Podcast. You know, I'm Marley of the blog Namely Marley, and I am thrilled to be here talking with you and delivering the tools and the tricks of the trade for people just like you, bloggers who love food. Before we get started, I wanted to give a happy shout out to today's featured listener. The Kitchen Snob left this comment and review on iTunes. I'm really getting a lot out of this podcast. Marley is a great interviewer, and I like her empathetic, knowledge-seeking style. I appreciate the little blurbs at the very beginning. Gives me a little taste of what I can expect from the guest without having to listen to a long intro. Keep them coming. Thanks so much, Kitchen Snob. That is such a great review, and I'm so glad that you're finding this podcast part of your food blogging journey. Let me tell you, sometimes picking those blurbs for the beginning of the show is not always easy, especially when you have a guest like today who shares so many awesome sound bites, so many heartfelt, inspiring words that it's really hard to pick which one to share. I love it though, because that means it's an episode with a lot of great gems, and it means it's delivering amazing content for you, and that's my goal. Hey, if you want to be a featured listener in a future episode, leave a review on iTunes. I hope to be reading your name next week. Before I introduce today's speaker, I want to let you know that Brandy and I did the Smart Keywords webinar last week, and it was amazing. We delivered so much great content. If you're wondering how you can improve your SEO game, specifically as it relates to keywords, including things like long-tail keywords, keyword research, and more, I encourage you to go check it out. Go to chopped.academy/smart today. Okay, on to today's show. Today, I'm talking with Jessica Hoffman. She's of the site Choosing Chia. Maybe you know about it because you've seen her gorgeous photos on Instagram. Well, Jessica and I love that we share so much in common related to our reading list. It's a very inspiring conversation. In fact, I had a really hard time picking what I would call this episode today because there were so many inspiring things that we talked about. However, I love what Jessica said about finding that food blogger work ethic, because let's be real here. It takes a lot of work to be successful as a food blogger. I think it's important to know that before you get started, or even when you're in the process as working as a food blogger. You can easily get discouraged when you get into the thick of it and you realize how much work is involved. Because if you have this pie in the sky notion that food blogging is all sprinkles and parsley flakes, it can be a real downer to realize how much work is actually involved. And I love it because I have been, obviously I've talked with you about the fact that I'm very much into mindset lately. And I've been listening lately to a lot of things on that topic. And I heard somebody say recently that the more comfortable that we are in our lives, the harder it is to make yourself motivated and to work hard. Think about it like exercise. If you're having a comfortable day, it's really hard to pick up and go to the gym, right? However, after you go work out, you feel so good, but somehow you've got to talk yourself into that. It's almost like you have to work now on the goals that you want to have, even when you don't think that you want to have them. So like to go work out at the gym is something that feels like, oh, I could just do that tomorrow. In reality, when you do it today, it makes you feel better tomorrow. So it's important to kind of have that in mind. However, I also want to point out what this gentleman said was very important, and that actually there's two forms of happiness. There is this happiness that's like this kind of indulgent, these are my desires and I'm going to give in to those desires. Like, maybe I'd like to sit back on my back porch swing and read a book, or maybe I want to go play tennis, or maybe there's these things that I just really enjoy to do, and those are some indulgences for me. That is one form of happiness. But another form of happiness is working hard towards a goal. And in fact, it's kind of that seeking of the goal that gives us some happiness. Sometimes it's not actually achieving the goal that feels as good as actually the working towards it. So to find ways to enjoy that and embrace that rather than letting it bring you down, that's where the real reward can be. So I loved this conversation with Jessica because this is exactly the kind of things that we were talking about, how you can develop the mindset to do the work that you need to do. And in fact, Jessica talks a lot about the importance of visioning techniques, having a growth mindset, and finding ways to work in your zone of genius. So Jessica is dedicated to the practice of yoga and minimalism too. And so we talk a lot about that. And specifically, we talk about balance. And I love how Jessica has discovered ways to be her most productive when she's working. And that takes effort too, like finding the techniques that work best for you to be as productive as you can be while you're working. But she also talks about the importance of incorporating rest in your routine as well. She actually said this, that there's virtue in work and there's virtue in rest too. And that way you realize that incorporating rest in your work is also part of your work. Ah, isn't that brilliant? I just love it. I'm telling you, there is so much inspiring conversation in today's episode that I can't wait to share it with you. So why don't we just get right to it? Here's today's featured discussion with Jessica Hoffman. Hey everyone, I'm happy to have on the show today Jessica Hoffman. She's with the site Choosing Chia. Welcome to the Chop Podcast, Jessica.
Thanks, Marley. Thanks so much for having me.
I am so glad to have you here. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. First of all, I think I've kind of, I've been following you for a while on Instagram, and your photos are just so beautiful. I'm sure you must love the look of your feed as well.
Oh, thank you. And yeah, I do. It's actually evolved quite a bit over the years, but I really feel like I found my voice with my feed and my photography style.
I love that, the idea of finding your voice, both metaphorically, but also, visually. In some ways, your voice is kind of a representation of what your feed looks like too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, that creativity aspect of it, it can really reflect you and your personality and your style.
Uh-huh. Oh, I heard somebody say recently, I'm kind of like a self-help junkie, to be completely honest. And I've been listening to Mel Robbins. Do you know who that is?
Yes, I actually recently just finished her book, The 5 Second Rule,
Oh,
the
I don't
audiobook.
have that book, but I just got the one she did on the Audible.
Mhm.
And it's like the one right after that. So now I think I'm gonna have to go back and get the 5 second rule.
Okay. And I'm going to have to read the one that you just read. 'Cause she's fantastic.
She really is. And she said something about like how it's important to follow your energy. And I think sometimes I have a tendency to like look outside of myself for what I should be doing. And hearing her say that really had a big impact on me. Like I feel like, oh, okay, like I like the way this photo looks. It doesn't have to be like your photo or somebody else's. I really like this. So I'm kind of just doing that more lately, and it's energizing. I feel so excited.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. So I wonder if maybe that's how you feel about your feed now too. Like you kind of, like you said, when you found your voice, it made me think of that. Like, oh, I bet she followed the energy about what did she like about this photo, and she kind of kept going with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I love the kind of light and airy, very
Yes.
clean kind of look. And
Yeah.
photo has so much energy within it that it's really great to kind of just put that out there and kind of, be able to express your creativity in that way.
Oh, it's so beautiful. And I get this impression, I mean, I've never been in your house, but I have this feeling based on some of the photos that you shared that you're kind of a minimalist. Is that true?
That is very true. That is very
Really?
spot on. Yes.
I love it. I love that kind of very clean look. It's not only is it aesthetically beautiful, but I also find it very peaceful to be around in my own home.
Yes, I completely agree. So yeah, I like to keep my home like pretty minimalist, very white, simple and clean. And,
Yeah.
if I have any kind of clutter or anything like that in my space, my mind physically feels cluttered when I see it out in the open. So having that really kind of breathable space to live in really gives my mind that space to breathe as well.
Oh, this is so good. I mean, I would call myself a minimalist wannabe. I'm not there, but I'm kind of in transition. And so so when I heard you say the things that are in your space, so does that mean like maybe a good first step is just to put things away? Like in other
Oh
words, my
yeah.
closets may be cluttered, but not the living area.
Yeah, definitely put things away. I don't know if you read Marie Kondo's book, The
I did.
Magical
Yes.
Art of Tidying Up. Is that what it's called?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I have my closet completely organized now. Another thing that I love to do, which is kind of minimalism and kind of also great for daily motivation, is making my bed in the morning every day. And
Yes.
that really kind of helps your space feel clean and ready to go rather than
Yeah.
having kind of a messy bed. Especially for me, my office space is in my bedroom because I work from home. So if my bed's a mess when I wake up in the morning, I really struggle to sit down at my desk and like feel focused at work.
Oh, that's great. And in fact, now that you say that, I realize that I have actually, what I did is I have begun with my bedroom. So I feel like that's the very first thing I see when I get up in the morning. So if I can have that at least be organized and minimal, then it sets my day off right. And hopefully it'll kind of give me the bug to do it through the rest of the house.
Absolutely, I agree. That's the best place to start. Start with the bedroom, and then make your way through the rest of the house.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so I think we're supposed to be talking about food blogging. You're with the site Choosing Chia, which is a lovely site. It's so beautiful and a lot of great recipes. So I just want to ask you, what made you decide to start your blog?
Yeah, so I actually started. Funny, I started with the Instagram account first, and I was working in marketing. I was working just a 9 to 5 marketing job, which wasn't particularly fulfilling for me. I was pretty bored with it. It was very repetitive, and I always liked cooking, and I always liked food, and I was pretty into kind of healthy eating. So I just decided on a whim to start an Instagram account just as something fun to do on the side as a hobby. And then a bit later that year, I actually got laid off work because the company I was working for went bankrupt. And at that point, I spontaneously decided to take a trip to India to do my yoga instructor's certification. And when I came back, I decided to start the blog because I was very influenced by the yogi diet and vegetarian diet, and really incorporated that sense of wellness even more into my daily life. And so I started the blog, and it kind of just happened on a whim from there, kind of to correspond with the Instagram account. I figured, hey, I have this Instagram account, I'm posting photos, but what about the actual recipes for the things I'm making? There's not really anywhere to put them. So yeah, so that's how Choosing Chia was born.
Wow, that's a great story. And so you must have had a passion for cooking before you actually started the Instagram account, huh?
Yeah, I've always been cooking. I grew up in a home where cooking, baking was always going on. So I feel like I had the cooking bug from a young age, and I always loved it.
And then your trip to India just kind of cemented in your mind, like, oh, I have an approach how I'm going to deal with food from this point forward. And that's kind of that's my impression of what you share on Choosing Chia is it's like vegetarian recipes, but also with it fits a certain nutritional aspect. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a very heavy focus on plant-based and wholesome ingredients. And, of course, there's some indulgent recipes as
Yes.
well, because one thing that I really believe in, which is, again, very big in the yogi practice, is having balance, a balanced lifestyle. So, you got to treat yourself too sometimes. So you will find some indulgent recipes, but most of the recipes will have a very strong focus on wholesome ingredients, plant-based ingredients to really get that nutrition that our body needs.
I'm so glad to hear you say that because it is a topic I wrestle with sometimes myself because personally, I am doing a lot of really wholesome nutritional recipes for myself, and then on my site, it's like chocolate cake and all these really good indulgent foods. But I do feel it's important to have a balance of recipes, like you just said, where because on the weekends is when I like to relax, and if I'm going to have some vegan donuts or whatever, usually it's going to be on the weekends, and it just really works for me. And I can see where if I was too strict, I would probably be binge eating or something.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm definitely the same way. You want to be able to live a little and
Yeah.
enjoy the holidays
Yeah.
and indulgent foods and all those things. Try new restaurants on the weekends. So that's a big part of the way I eat and what I like to promote on the blog.
Oh, that's great. I mean, there was a time in my life I was so strict on myself that I mean, I'm just really proud of myself the fact that I cohabitate with Oreos at this point because it used to be that if Oreos were in my house, I would like sniff them out and I would eat them all. And now I don't have that. It's really nice. If I want one, I go have one, maybe two, but I don't eat the whole row anymore.
That's great. That's amazing to hear. I actually just before about 15 minutes ago, I just ate a cinnamon roll. So I was working on a recipe for that. And of course, they're freshly baked. I just had to have one.
Oh,
Absolutely delicious. So, but I had
yeah.
my cinnamon roll. I also had a big salad for lunch. So, you really get that kind of balance in. And yeah, it's
Yes.
important to, indulge in those things and not restrict yourself and say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to eat a cinnamon roll. Or I'm not going to eat an Oreo because you shouldn't do that. And then you end up binge eating or,
Right.
because you're limiting yourself. It's better just allow yourself to have that and not feel guilty about it and not worry about it and just incorporate it into your life and
Yes.
enjoy it when you have it.
Right. I love that approach so much. I've learned a lot about my body in the last few years. I think in some ways being around food blogging has forced that on me because, I think in some ways being around food all the time just kind of helped maybe desensitize me to all these great things. I can have them in the house, I can enjoy them, but I can also enjoy the days where I'm raw or the days where I'm eating, like you say, a big salad and things like that. So it's good to have a balance. I love that.
Absolutely.
Do you I'm sorry I don't know the answer to this question, but do you actually share, yoga on your site as well, or is it simply food?
So it's mostly food. I don't share any yoga on my website itself. I do share a lot of blogging tips and social media tips on the blog as well. So I do have a bit of a lifestyle section where I share information on that to help people who are interested in blogging.
Ah, that's great. Okay, so let's talk about food photography because it's something I'm curious about. When you first started your Instagram account and you were sharing basically food photos, did you come into that with already some experience around food photography, or is that a skill you had to develop?
Oh, absolutely not. I still have the first photos from Instagram. They're still up there if you scroll all the way back. But no, I was shooting with my iPhone, whatever phone was out at the time. This is a few years ago already. And I had no idea about any kind of photography. So I'm pretty sure my first photo I posted was of a smoothie bowl. And I plated it on my kitchen floor. So I just put it on a tile on the kitchen floor and took a photo of it with my phone and posted that. So photography was definitely something that I learned. I actually started a bit more with food styling before I picked up an actual DSLR camera. So I started shooting with my iPhone and got a little more into the styling when I started seeing all the beautiful photos on Instagram. And I
Oh,
was
yeah.
like, hey, I
Yeah.
would love for my photos to look like this too. And then I picked up my first DSLR camera and I hated it at first, honestly, because I had no
Yes.
idea what I was doing. And I thought I was just taking horrible photos. And, before you know something and before you learn it seems really difficult. So I was a little stubborn with it at first, to be honest. And I went back to my phone shortly after because it seems so much more simple to just open the camera app on your
Yes.
phone and click a button. But then I decided that I really did love the styling and the photography and that I wanted to give it a go. So I just started practicing a lot more with it and switched over to using an actual camera.
I love that, uh, when you're not good at something and it isn't any fun. It's just not. It's like it makes you feel like a failure, but this mindset of really like focusing and pushing and like learning about how to use that DSLR and then over time, it doesn't happen overnight obviously, but over time then you're able to take the shots that you really love. I think that's so cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think my mindset as I've grown my food blog has definitely shifted from the beginning where, I was a bit more kind of reluctant and stubborn to learning these new things because it was hard and it
Yeah.
was difficult. And, it's no fun, like you said,
Yes.
when you don't know how to do it. But, it's once you get past that hurdle and you learn how that you can actually grow and develop a new skill in something.
Yeah, I think it's Malcolm Gladwell that says something about the 10,000 hours, and I don't know that that's
Yes.
necessarily required like 10,000, but the point is you have to put the time in. You have to really, and it does make a difference. All of a sudden, things start to click, and that feels really good.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a great feeling.
Yes, totally. And then I don't know about you, but for me, sometimes what can be so frustrating these days is the fact that I'll be making a recipe and I'll realize that I bought the raspberries yesterday and now they're not looking so good, and I feel like in some ways I can kind of nitpick, but at the same time, I feel like that attention to detail really makes a difference in the photos.
Marley, it's definitely a struggle, I'll tell you. Yeah, sometimes I have like it's a little crazy, the world of food blogging. And I'll have like 3 packs of parsley in my fridge because the parsley from yesterday wasn't looking super fresh, and you want those really fresh looking ingredients. That's one of the easiest and best ways to really elevate a dish, especially, things like a salad or something with fruit. You don't want those mushy raspberries or that
Yeah.
wilted cilantro on top. So having fresh, nice ingredients is really important. And I'll spend time even when I'm plating or food styling, opening an entire pack of cilantro or that entire pack of raspberries and pulling out the most beautiful pieces to use on my dish.
Wow, that's amazing. I actually have started growing parsley because I use it so much. And, even just chopped up and sprinkled over it, just that freshness of the green looks so beautiful.
Oh yeah, it
But
looks beautiful and it tastes great too.
yes,
It's
and
great.
parsley actually grows quite nicely in a pot too. So you can, I have it outside right now, but it can come in the winter.
Oh, that's amazing. That's really good to know because it's really cold here in the winter. So
Where are you at?
um, I'm in Montreal, Canada.
Montreal. It's so beautiful there. Yes.
Yeah,
But yes,
it's
very
beautiful
cold.
right now in the winter. It
Yeah.
gets a little cold and not
Yes.
the best weather for growing herbs.
No, but there are these grow lights now that you can buy where so you could have the plant inside and have a grow light over it, and it would
Right.
work.
Yeah, it's very smart. It's definitely a good idea to have them growing on hand at home and not have to keep buying new herbs and things all the time for your dishes. And herbs are one of my favorite things actually on savory dishes, probably in almost every single one of my recipes. Some herbs mixed in or sprinkled on top. It really kind of just elevates a dish.
Yes, and I'm curious where you talked about that you focused on food styling first. What do you think were your biggest influences on food styling?
Oh, definitely. Honestly, I think it was mostly through Instagram.
Oh,
When I started to get more into the foodie scene and see these beautiful images, and I started off making a lot of kind of smoothie bowls and Buddha bowls and these kinds of things. And it was like a very big focus on the styling when you're making a smoothie bowl and how
yeah.
you're going to put the fruit on top and like fresh flowers on the bowls and things like that. And so I was very influenced by that and things that I was seeing on social media and how beautiful they were. And I wanted to be able to create content like that too.
I'm going to ask you something now. This is more about Instagram. Um, so this is current day Instagram, not how you started. Do you ever have times that you're sharing things on Instagram just because, like you used to, it's a beautiful photo of this food, but it doesn't have the recipe? Like it doesn't. Does everything that you share on Instagram have a recipe that links back to your site?
So now everything I share on Instagram has a recipe that links back to my site.
Yes.
Whereas I used to kind of just make, a smoothie bowl,
Yes.
for example, wouldn't necessarily have a recipe. It was just a beautiful photo to share. And then I kind of made the transition about a year ago where I really, rather than the Instagram account kind of feeling like almost like a separate entity of my business where it was kind of just more fun photos, I really wanted the Instagram account to feel more connected and in sync with my blog.
Oh,
So I started sharing all of my recipes onto Instagram and having a recipe for everything that links back.
oh, that's great. Okay, so let's talk about your blog because you started Choosing Chia, and I'm just curious, was there a time when you realized, well, it sounds like, your job went away, and the company went away. And so was that when you just said, I'm just going to do this, this is going to be my job, and you didn't have, in my mind, I'm imagining that you don't have any background as a food blogger, so it's kind of like flying blind. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's pretty right. When I got back from India, to be honest, I was pretty broke at that point. I took like the last of my money that I had from my job and took off to do that thing. And I came back and I kind of got hit with this dose of reality where, I had the blog as my kind of hobby on the side, but I needed to make an income. And I was kind of like, all right, back to reality, back to the 9 to 5 life. And I actually got another job in fashion marketing. And I was working there for almost a year and doing Choosing Chia on the side. I would wake up in the morning, shoot my photos, go into work, come home, write my blog posts. But it was very sporadic at that time. I didn't even know back then that I could have a career as a food blogger. It wasn't really even a thought in my mind. It was just kind of my little escape, right?
Yeah.
So I was just doing that on the side. And then eventually I started getting paid through Instagram before the blog, actually, for some sponsored content. which was pretty shocking to me at the time, to be honest. I had no idea about it. And that's when I started to really think, hey, there could be something here. And then I got some more contracts in and got some contracts to do some recipe development for other companies and some food photography. And I started making enough money where it felt like it made sense to leave my corporate job.
How long do you think that was from the time that you started your blog to the time that you were able to quit your job and do it full time?
I'd say it was about a year.
That's great. That had to
Mm-hmm.
be so fulfilling to, turn this what you described as a hobby into a career.
Yeah, it was. It definitely was. It was one of those kind of really surreal moments. I never expected that I would be able to do that, but I also knew, going into work every day, like I wasn't feeling fulfilled, and the blog and doing what I was doing on the side as a hobby felt so fulfilling to me. So being able to leave and do that full time was a dream come true.
Oh, so much so. And I heard you say earlier that you share blogging tips and social media tips on your site as well. And sounds like the work that you did 9 to 5 outside of the home was very marketing focused. I'm just curious, now that you've had some time to reflect on all of this, do you think there's a certain set of skills or knowledge that a food blogger needs to really make it a go?
It's a great question. One thing that I think you need to be able to make food blogging into a career is to really have that proper mindset and work ethic. Because of course mindset's really important, and believing that you can do it, but the good work ethic to actually sit down and want to put in the time to make it happen, I think that's really important. And that's something that I think a lot of people overlook. Or I'll get some messages sometimes on Instagram or by email of people, asking how I grew the blog, or asking for some help on how they can grow their blog or social media. And they just haven't put the time in yet, or they just haven't built up enough content. And so really having that work ethic and remembering that, like, you need to put in the work, you need to put in the time, you need to put in the hours to actually make it grow. I think that's probably the most important thing to remember, to have patience while that's happening.
It's so funny that you say that because I'm sure you're probably the same, but I'm in a few food blogging groups on Facebook, and every now and then someone will say something like, "I don't understand why my blog hasn't taken off yet," and they maybe started it 2 months ago.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm referring
Yeah.
to. So, there are those selective few that are lucky, and
Yes.
2 months
Yep.
in, and their blog takes off, or 2 months in, and they suddenly have 50,000 followers on Instagram because something went viral. But those are the exception to the rule, not the rule, right?
Right.
So most of us have to be within the rule.
And who knows what happened in that scenario? Maybe they know somebody, or you just don't. You're really creating a story around. It's this is where the mindset stuff comes in, and I'm so glad that you brought that up because I'm so into mindset lately because I feel like I have had this tendency to be this kind of I play this victim role, and I understand it. I get why it happens, probably because I didn't have a lot of parental support as a child, and so then my adult mindset turned into why isn't somebody telling me that I can do this? And in reality, I have to know that I can do this. It has to come from within.
Absolutely.
I know. I'm
I
so
definitely
inspired by this
agree.
topic because if I feel like I've got the mental toughness and also the vision to do this, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, the mindset is so important, and actually, seeing your goals and seeing yourself at the finish line it's really important to visualize that and to know where you're going with it.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this, but I play tennis, and I just had a coaching session this morning. And so I can just share with you, I was talking to my coach about that because I signed up in a tournament. And so I'm, getting some coaching from him so that I can get ready for this tournament. And I said, what if I envision myself winning the tournament? I feel like that could put pressure on me. So how do I do that? And he said, I love this because he said, what you imagine is the tournament as a puzzle, and it has all these different puzzle pieces. And so you can envision yourself hitting a great shot with your forehand, or you can envision yourself hitting a great serve, and focus on those things that can happen around the court, and also possibly holding the trophy at the end. But you don't have control over how the puzzle's put together, but you can envision those different separate pieces. Isn't that cool?
That's really cool. I'm actually glad you brought that up, Marley, because I was just recently reading an article on mindset and on visualization. And it was actually just saying that, a lot of people will focus on visualizing the end
Yes.
goal, where they want to
Yeah.
be. And they say it's really helpful to actually visualize the steps that are going to get you there. So, what are you going to do? So, if it's food blogging, rather than just, visualizing yourself maybe leaving your 9 to 5 job and having a blog and a successful career, you visualize yourself also, on that day-to-day grind and learning the photography and making the recipes and writing the posts. And
Yes.
that's actually, that mindset is supposed to be really helpful in achieving your goals.
I love that because it is, like you say, it's so easy to focus on the end game, but we oftentimes don't have control over that end game. So I think that can lead to disappointment if you're not careful.
I totally
Because,
agree.
I can imagine that other people that I'm playing at this tournament might also be visiting themselves winning it. So, I mean, not everybody, there's only one person who's going to hold the trophy at the end, which is nice about food blogging because I love that there are many pathways to success as a food blogger. And so, there's not just one winner.
Yeah. Yeah, we can all hold the trophy in food
That's
blogging.
right. That's right. Well, and I spoke to somebody a couple of months ago, and her point was her goal or early on was just simply to pay for some of the things that she wanted to do in her life. So it really wasn't about making enough money to get by. It was really kind of bonus money to do these fun projects that she wanted to do. And then eventually it grew. So I feel like there's a lot of ways that we can take wins away from food blogging.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it doesn't need to necessarily be, a full-time career. Maybe it just brings you joy to have something to do on the side. Or,
Yes.
for me, my first win was I got a free bag of chia seeds when I started my
I
Instagram
love it.
account. And I thought that was like the coolest thing. I've never gotten anything for free before. So that was like a really big win for me at the time.
Well, and it's so applicable, right? Chia for chia,
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's so great. And now you're probably like a bag of chia. Well, that's great. But it's like we evolve in the things. Like I totally get that because I agree. At the beginning, you're so excited to get those things, and then as you progress and you become more of a professional, you're like, okay, I gotta get paid here too.
Yeah, it's crazy how much your mindset shifts
Yes.
as you grow, and especially as you want to turn a blog into a business, and you kind of have to start implementing that business mindset into it, and act not just as a blogger but as the CEO and make good decisions for your brand and company.
Oh, that's so good, so true. And just another thing on this mindset stuff that we're talking about because I listen to this podcast. It's a sports psychologist, and she's got a guest on her show that is a sports psychologist for a professional baseball team, and she is talking about herself personally that she struggles every single day with feelings of insecurity and. Or not knowing, like, do I know enough to do this job, that kind of thing. And it made me feel good to hear that because I sometimes it's easy to think, is this just me? Because in food blogging, you're just
Hmm.
talking about transitioning to being a professional and charging, and that stuff is hard. How do you know what to charge for your services? And it can feel really overwhelming. So, like I say, she was saying the thing that she used to help her grow confidence in these areas where she felt unconfident was to just remind herself, I belong in this space. I belong here. And just repeating that to herself helped her get through that.
I think that's really important. I think, we all struggle with imposter syndrome,
Yes.
or feeling like, am I meant to be here? Am I meant to be doing this? Or there's so many people out there that are better than me. Who am I to be sharing this? But it's important to remember that all of us have a different voice, and all of us have a different perspective and gift to share. And even if something's been done, it hasn't been done by you. So keeping that in mind, that always really helps me get through whenever I'm having those kinds of feelings.
Oh, so true. So it's easy to think, there's already a pumpkin pie recipe out there. They don't need mine. But then I think what I'm hearing you say is, yes, they do need yours. You need to get that out there. You need to own it.
Exactly. If that's the gift you have to share with the world, is making your own pumpkin pie and putting that out there,
Yes.
then that's what you need to do. And I think it's also important to keep in mind how many people there are out there on the
Yes.
internet. So, we might think like, oh, well, if there's already pumpkin pie, like who needs my pumpkin pie recipe, right?
Right.
But there's so many people out there to serve, and different content is going to resonate better with different people. So, you'll be able to create your own tribe and your own people who will love what you're doing.
Ah, that's so true. And then I think that's when I think things start to click and you start to feel that inspiration and it doesn't feel like work anymore. It feels like joy, like every moment. I mean, there's a lot of hard work that goes into food blogging. However, I think if you come at it with this mindset of it's like a growth mindset, you feel, I think, at least I know in my own life, I feel more inspired when I am in this frame of mind.
I agree,
Ah,
totally.
that's great. So let's talk about, I am so curious about the routines that people go through. And because there is so much that goes on in food blogging, I am just curious if you could describe, do you have some routines that you've created around food blogging for yourself?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I've actually gotten really big into routines more this year. And one thing that I absolutely love to do with my blogging, which absolutely changed it for me, is to batch work. So I used to kind of, take a day and photograph a recipe, then sit down and edit the photos, and then write up the blog post, and then write my Instagram posts. And, I'm bouncing back and forth between all of these different things in one day. Whereas now I sit down and I'll try and photograph and make, at least 2 to maybe 3 if I have time recipes in a day, or I'll do one day that's just recipe testing, or a day that's just writing blog posts. And that's really helped me be able to sit down and focus. And it's actually freed up a lot of time within my day to be able to kind of sit down and actually focus on a specific task at hand rather than like bouncing back and forth between a bunch of different tasks. So batch working has been a game changer in my business. And typically I'll take 2 or 3 days a week to shoot recipes. And then I'll have, one day that's kind of just admin stuff. And then I'll take one day to kind of batch my blog posts and my Instagram posts. And then one day that's kind of miscellaneous, whatever's missing and needs to get done in that
Yes.
day.
Do you have tools that you use for things like social media sharing?
So right now I use an app called
Oh, I use
Later
that too.
for yeah, it's great for my Instagram posts. So I'll sit down on Fridays and I write out all of my posts for the following week. Occasionally occasionally something will change or something comes up that I'm feeling really inspired to share in the moment, or I want to edit a caption in the moment, then I'll do that as well. But I love using Later for Instagram, and I love using a program called Asana, which is a task
Yes.
management program. So I use that to create all of my to-do lists and write down any of my tasks and things like that. So that really helps me to stay organized.
That's nice. I sometimes I think of Asana as a teamwork kind of tool, but you can use it solo as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's great for either or.
Oh, that's great. And do you have like virtual assistants that help you as well?
Yes, I have a virtual assistant who is working with me now. She's absolutely amazing, and again has helped change things in my business so much. And we use another program called Slack to
Ah,
communicate, which
yes, I've
is
heard of some.
very common, which is really great. It's so easy to communicate, and she helps scheduling with all the Facebook posts and Pinterest posts, and sending out the newsletters, and all of the things like that, which again has freed up so many hours in my business to be able to focus on other
I
things.
think there's something about having somebody who works with you that adds a little bit of accountability too. Like maybe on my own, I might slack. I want to get this published, but I might slack on it. But if I know somebody's working with me, I mean, that's money and going out the door too. So it's like, I don't know, there's some accountability there.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's nice to have that accountability, and you want to put a good example forward
Yeah.
and feel like you have like a good team together and that you're all working towards a common goal.
Yes, exactly. And then you've got Slack that helps that you can hire somebody from anywhere from around the world even. So that's nice.
Yes, that's
Yes,
amazing.
although I do know some people who prefer to have their virtual assistant in the same area, and sometimes they actually come over and help them clean after a cook day or things
Mhm.
like that. So that's nice as well.
So not so virtual.
No, that's true. Let's take the virtual out of assistant. Yeah, I love that. You were talking about Later. I have tried using CoSchedule for Instagram because I love CoSchedule that it's right there in WordPress. But I find that I don't know. It's not. I love how Later has that. It's a way of like seeing what your feed looks like right there on the screen. That's nice.
Yes. Yeah, I love it. It's a great app. I know a lot of people like another one called
Yes.
Planoly, which I played around with a little bit, which is also a fantastic tool. I just prefer Later because it's what I started using and, creature of
Yeah,
habit.
exactly.
So
So does that part of your workflow now when you're working on a blog post, you actually, with Later you have to upload the photos into the app. Is that how your workflow goes with let's say you're working on a brand new post?
So my workflow using Later, I just use it for scheduling Instagram posts. So I usually take an hour out of my day on Friday because then I have all my blog posts usually prepared for the following week and all of my photos prepared. And I sit down and I schedule out a full week's worth of Instagram posts up until the following Friday.
Nice. So you're kind of working 1 week at a time, and that works for you. Ah, that's
Yes.
great. I sometimes will experiment with like going a whole month at a time, but boy, it's really tough to do that.
It is tough. I try and have content prepared at least 2 weeks ahead of time. So that way, if I'm ever sick or taking a vacation or something, I know that I'm good. I know that the content's ready to go. But it's definitely tough getting ahead, and definitely takes a lot of time to dedicate to make every single recipe and blog post.
Yes, exactly. And are you focused entirely on new content, or do you also go through and update old content as well?
So I've just started this year updating old content in addition to creating new
Yeah.
content because I have a lot of old recipes that are really great recipes. To
Yes.
be honest, they're just from when I started out and have terrible photos or very little information in the blog
Yes.
post. Back when I had no idea what I was doing. So I'm trying to work on updating some of those posts, especially the ones that I think are great recipes and that can resonate well with my audience.
Boy, that just changes everything, doesn't it? It feels to me like sometimes I could work 24/7 and still not be caught up. How do you create work-life balance?
It's tricky, to be honest. It's really easy to feel like you need to keep working at the end of the workday or have it on your mind on the weekends. One thing that I've committed to doing this year is to make sure to take at least one full day on the weekend off. So I don't work full weekends or full days on the weekends, but sometimes I'll shoot a recipe or I don't know, end up like dealing with a few admin tasks or, it
Mm.
just kind of takes you out of that weekend vibe. So if I'm doing that one day on the weekend, I tell myself, okay, one day is going to be completely off. And it's actually really beneficial because if you have at least that full day off, it's a lot easier to go back into it on Monday and feel like you have a clear mind and feel like you had the chance to rest. So, there's a famous quote that goes, there's virtue in work and there is virtue in rest. Use both and overlook neither.
Ah, that's great.
So I think that's really important to remember.
Yeah.
And, when you feel like you want to keep going or keep working, to remember that rest, in a sense, is part of your work. So,
Ah, because that makes you more fully present when you're working.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
another thing I've tried to do, I like this train of thought so much, and I've tried to make myself be more focused when I am working because I can find myself easily distracted by, you know how it is. Like you actually go into Instagram to do work, and then the next thing you know, you you've just been like looking at pretty pictures for an hour.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's it's our phones are
Yes,
terrible for that. I'll pick up my phone to check the time, and next thing I know, I'm like been scrolling on Facebook for 10 minutes. And I put my phone down, and I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't even check what time it was. So yeah, it's hard with social media and things like that these
yes.
days. One thing that I love to do, which I have an app on my phone for. There's several apps. Is to use something called Pomodoros for working. And that's when you work in 25-minute increments and take a 5-minute break. And you set a timer on your phone through one of these apps, or you don't need to use an app even. You can just set it yourself. And then you are supposed to focus and just work on whatever task you have at hand for 25 minutes with no
Mm.
distractions. So if it's writing your blog post, you just do that for 25 minutes. Your phone's on do not disturb. You don't check anything else. When you have your 5-minute break, then you can take your time. And there's been scientific studies behind this that kind of show that we can really focus well for this 25-minute increment. And then taking a 5-minute break to let your brain relax before you get back into the next one is a really good system to help you focus. And, you get a lot more done in those little 25-minute increments than you would in, say, like an hour or 2 hours of unfocused time where you're like doing work, but you're also checking your phone and
Yeah.
you're also like petting your
You feel
dog.
like you're being, you're working, but in reality, it takes you a long time to get back, like to get into what you were just doing if you're just constantly distracted.
Totally. And we've all had those days. I've definitely had those days where, you do a full work day and the end of the day comes and you feel like you didn't get anything done.
Yes.
So yeah, using that Pomodoro technique, if I know I got 10 Pomodoros done in the day, then I know I got heads down, deep work done, and you feel very accomplished at the end of it.
That's great. And do you use Asana also to kind of create some tasks that you want to get done that day as well?
Yeah, so I use Asana to create tasks, and I use a handwritten planner to kind of write out my
Yes.
to-do list for the day and for the week. So I use that to kind of track what really needs to get done and what my most important tasks are.
Ah, that's great. I actually have taken lately to even just like on a sticky note. Like I just, sometimes things are just going crazy, and if I can just get these 5 things done today, I'm going to feel good about it. And so I love that. That's really good. That's another thing
Yes.
that Mel Robbins said in that book that I was reading. She said that oftentimes we don't celebrate our accomplishments. We will spend too much time at the end of the day going, "Gosh darn it, I wanted to do this and I didn't get that done." And oh, I said this thing to this person, I shouldn't have said that. Or so we focus on all these negatives and we don't focus on the things that we actually accomplished. Like, for example, maybe I washed the dishes and the sink is clean, or maybe I took a walk with my dog. Just things like that she actually recommended at the end of the day to write down a list by your bed and have like, here's 5 things that I did today. I love that.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fantastic too, because it's also really easy for us to think we have more hours in the day than we do, or
Yeah.
think things that take less time than they actually do. So, most people have a tendency to write out this like huge to-do list, and then you end up feeling disappointed at the end of the day when you didn't get through it. When in reality, your list should be much smaller. And if you sit down at the beginning of the day and say, okay, what are 3 to 5 things that I want to get done today? Is it to shoot a recipe? Is it to, have dinner with a friend tonight? Is it to organize my closet? Whatever it is, work related or not work related, if you focus on just less things in your day, it's also kind of a minimalist, right, kind of
Yes.
outlook. You'll feel more accomplished, and to give yourself the space to actually accomplish those tasks rather than flooding yourself with a million things to do and not getting them done.
That's probably another good reason why it's good to have a VA to do the more, the 1,000 other tasks, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's if you can afford it in your business, it's definitely a game
I love
changer.
that. So I'm not going to ask you for specific numbers, but I'm just curious, what would you look at as the main revenue component for your blog? Is it like a lot of times people are getting ads because of traffic, or they're getting sponsored work, or they're doing, like work to do recipe development for other sites? I'm just curious, do you have a certain model that seems to be working for you?
Yeah, so right now for Choosing Chia, the main revenue source is through sponsored content, and then it's through ad revenue, and then a very small amount through affiliate marketing. So I know some people do very well with affiliate marketing. For me, to be honest, I don't find I'm particularly great at it. So it's not something that I invest my time in. It's not my zone of genius. Um, Sponsored content is definitely really fun to create recipes for brands and things like that. So I definitely am very selective with who I work with, and if I feel they are a good fit for the blog. So that's kind of the main framework that I work with for
Oh,
that.
that's great. And that, like you say, I love that. I think we must be reading the same books. 'Cause I think is it Gay Hendricks that talks about your zone of genius? Yes.
Yes, yes, The Big
Yes, The
Leap.
Big Leap. I love that book.
Yes, fantastic
Isn't
book.
it?
Okay, so we're totally in sync with we can start a book
Yeah,
club.
that we should. We could start a book club. Because his point is, like, you could what I really loved about that book is because I really, I think I don't remember all the zones, but I think one of the zones was like accomplishment. I can be very accomplishment focused because like I can get into the weeds of things and I love that. It's mine, but I'm good at it, but somebody else could be good at it too, and it's not my zone of genius. Does that make sense?
Right, exactly. Yeah, and it's easy to want to do everything in your business, and at some point though, if you want to scale, you have to kind of look at the bigger picture and say, okay, what is it that I bring to the table that only I can bring to the table, and that I want to focus on putting out there, and what is it in my business that is really just taking up my time that I don't need to be doing.
Okay, along that line, I'm just going to ask you this. Would you ever feel like you would hire a virtual assistant or somebody that would do your social media for you?
Yes, so I'm thinking about that, like in terms of Instagram stories and popping on and creating the content. I feel that would always be me and my
Yes.
voice. But maybe to help out, responding to comments, or if people have questions, or, sometimes people want to know where the recipe is posted. They don't know it's linked in the bio, or, to help engage. I definitely think I would maybe help offload those tasks, or if it's just sharing, the new recipe of the day on Instagram stories, because it definitely is time consuming.
Yes.
On social media. And another thing that I've outsourced this year in my business is videos.
Ah,
So
nice.
food videos, we do kind of tasty style
Uh-huh.
videos, which again was one thing that at first I was like, I'm going to do that on my own. So I sat down, I started to learn how to do video. I watched some YouTube videos and like some courses and things like that. And, I filmed a couple videos, and I was just like, my gosh, this is time consuming on top of the photography and the recipe testing and writing the blog posts. And, I had to sit down and have a talk with myself and say, like, Jess, do you want to take this on? Like, is this something that you should be doing on top of everything else? And, in the end, I was like, no, it's not. So that I outsourced, and it's fantastic because we do one video a week. And if I was doing it myself, especially since, I didn't feel, again, like it was like, wasn't my
Yeah,
passion doing video. It was it felt like a
right.
chore when I was doing it. So that frees up, several hours in my week that I don't have to be doing that, but we can still have that content created for the
Yeah,
brand.
so it's still happening for you. You're just not doing it yourself, and that's brilliant.
Exactly.
Yeah. So when you've been working, I know that from time to time that you talked about how you write posts, and I'm sure you get comments from bloggers related to things like social media. What do you see as like some of the most difficult things that people have to conquer about social media when it as a food blogger?
Which social media
Well, let's talk about
channels?
Instagram, for example. So
Okay.
yeah, I guess you're right because they're also different.
So Instagram, I mean, like everyone, whole ordeal about the Instagram algorithm and how tricky it is and how to overcome it. Again, I think a lot of people, you know, I'll get messages from people. They'll post like a photo once a week on Instagram and be like, "Hey, why aren't I growing?" And you have to put in the work, you have to put in the time. So really, not being bitter about the way the social media channels work and how their algorithms work, and instead looking at it in a sense of okay, how can I work in sync with what this social media channel or platform wants, right?
Right.
So to have just a better mindset about it overall, and to be like, okay, so if, for Instagram, for example, they have the stories, and there's IGTV, and then there's posts, and there's information out there on it, and Instagram wants you to use the platform, and they want you to use their features. So to really just embrace that, embrace what they have out there, go on the platform, engage on it, post the content, share things that are valuable to your user. And I think that's the best way to conquer it, is by having that
Oh, I
mindset.
love that so much because it's so easy to sit back and go, I can't, nobody's going to see my post or, what, just let all that go and just do it. Right. That's what I'm hearing you say. Get there and, use the platform.
Exactly. Exactly. It's really easy to kind of, and if you start having that negative mindset, it's going to affect you. You're probably not going to put your best content out there, because subconsciously,
Yes.
right in the back of your head, you're sitting there saying, well, what's the point? No one's going to like this anyways. Rather than from approaching it of, this is my gift that I'm putting out there. This is what I can do. This is what I can offer other people. And, whoever sees it and likes it, like, that's fantastic.
Yes.
Even if you're only reaching 10 people, like, maybe you're making a difference to one person's life. Maybe one person is going to see that photo, and it's going to make their day better. They're going to make your recipe, and it's going to make them really happy. And you have to keep your eye, you have to keep your focus on that, rather than on like what you're missing
Oh,
out
that is
on.
so true because you never know what impact you're going to have on somebody else's life.
Yeah,
I can
definitely.
speak from experience on that because over the summer I had a bit of skin cancer happen on my scalp, and so I don't know, I contemplated whether I was going to share about it, and I finally did share, and I mean, I can imagine in my mind, I could play this scenario where some people might go, it's only skin cancer. It's not that big of a deal. It's highly curable. But in my mind, it's the C word. It's cancer. It did feel like a big deal to me. And then when I shared about it, I actually had several people who responded and said, thank you so much for sharing this, because now I've had a couple of spots I needed to get checked, and you made me realize I'm just going to go do it.
That's really big.
Yes.
You never
Yes, you
know.
never know. So again, I feel like that's what we were talking about early on, that Mel Robbins talking about following your energy. I think that's important. If you feel energized to share it, or just I think it's important to do that.
Yeah, definitely following your energy and your
Yes.
intuition, like what feels good for you, what you feel, if you're creating that content or if you're putting something out there, like how does it make you feel inside? Like, does it make you feel really energized and alive, or does it feel like a chore or something that like you don't love? Not to say that, in blogging or in business, sometimes there are things you have to do that are a bit
Yeah.
of a chore, and, you just have to push past those things. But talking again about, your zone of genius and what you have to offer and what you have to put out there, you should feel energetically aligned with
Yes,
it.
exactly. And I'm kind of an extrovert. So for me, even just talking about it to some people, and that really helps me get past that. Like, how you were talking about your mindset on social might be kind of negative because you kind of get down in the dumps about it. But talking to somebody else, and I think a lot of experts say that you're like the people you spend the most time with. So finding somebody positive that you can talk to, that can be a kind of a cheerleader for you, to kind of go, you could do this, you got this. It feels really good.
Yeah, I think that's really
Yeah.
important, and especially in the blogging sphere, to have a mindset that community over competition, and
Yes.
be able to have those friends in the industry that you can talk to and share tips with, and know that everything is abundant and that there's enough space for everyone to thrive in the industry, rather than approaching it again from a mindset of, oh, like there's not enough to go
Oh, I
around.
just wanna, like, frame that and put it on my wall. That was so good. Okay, I love to ask these fun questions at the end of the interview. Are you game?
Yes.
Okay, so tell me, what is your favorite food?
Oh, favorite food. Oh my God. There's so many. I think pizza though.
Pizza, I love
Yes.
it. What's your favorite toppings on your pizza?
Favorite toppings.
Yes,
I just like classic margarita.
and just cheese?
Hmm.
Yes, and what about the crust? What kind of is it, a thick crust? What kind of crust do you do?
I like a thin Italian crust.
And do you make it yourself or do you buy it?
Both. I'll make pizza myself sometimes. We actually have some really good Italian restaurants here. So I love that classic Italian pizza.
Oh, yes, and you like see that you're even minimalist when it comes to your pizza. You want just the marinara and the cheese.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with a good thing.
That's true, that's true. Okay, what's the favorite app on your phone?
Instagram.
That's your go-to app?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, what's the second favorite app on your phone?
Second favorite app on my phone, definitely Audible.
Oh, I love
Yes.
Audible. Yes.
So I'm big on audiobooks.
Yes, and you can listen to them as you're driving or going for a walk or whatever. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Ah, I love that. Okay, so do you have any time for TV or reading at all? And if so, what's your favorite?
Okay, so both, but reading, again, I listen to
Yes.
audiobooks. I find it very difficult to find time in my day to sit down and actually read, and I just absorb the knowledge better with audiobooks. So right now I'm reading Marie Forleo's Everything is Figure Outable.
Oh, I heard her talking about that recently. Is it good?
Yes, it's fantastic. And then I watch a bit of Netflix too, of
Yeah.
course. I'm not watching anything in particular right now, except for reruns of The Office when I just need a little downtime.
That's right. There's so many good shows out there. It's not even funny, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, tell me, how can people find you online?
People can find me at choosingchia.com and on Instagram at choosingchia.
I love it. Jessica, I have had such a great time. Thanks for taking the time to talk with me today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Marley.
Thanks to Jessica Hoffman for being my guest on today's episode of the Chopped Podcast. If you want to learn more about the Smart Keywords webinar or any of the other exciting courses and webinars at Chopped, go to chopped.academy today. And while you're there, be sure to subscribe to the Chopped newsletter too. A big heartfelt thank you for listening in on today's show. It was a great one, wasn't it? I appreciate you and your support of the Chopped Podcast. Leave a review on iTunes today for your chance to be a featured listener on next week's show. Hey, if you're loving today's episode, take a picture of yourself listening or share a screenshot using #NamelyMarley or #ChopPodcast. I love hearing from you. You inspire me, and I hope today's show is helpful and inspirational to you as well. Thanks for listening and have a great week.